Nate Fox from Sucker Punch Studios. I think he did a interview with PlayStation Access people. There was a short on YouTube that I came across where he had an interesting takes on why Sony PlayStation exclusives have been mostly very well received. And this is a take that I haven't really heard before. So I thought it was interesting to share.
One of the things that's very interesting about PlayStation producers that I've learned is that their method for dealing with game development teams started from an experience of dealing with rock bands from Sony Music. So they were used to saying, well, these developers are going to be a little eccentric. We need to support that because that's where the art comes from. And that seed of experience for music, I think, is what helps PlayStation games be so alive, because the studios are really treated as artists, and that means they're going to do some weird stuff.
I mean, I love this guy. He cracks the most awkward jokes sometimes in interviews, but he's really open about it. So I really like him. Anyway, interesting take. Very quick take, but I thought it was very interesting. Mostly because this is something that I have actually never have heard anyone say in this angle. Like, this is a very interesting take. We tend to treat games as art. You know, video games, we always like, especially if you're a gamer, you always defend the video game you're playing as art, right? Especially when people, talk against games. I know as a gamer myself, I tend to get very defensive about, how games are just like another entertainment medium, much like movies and TV shows, and they are all art pieces, right? And they are an art. It's a form of art, and we're very quick to come to get that conclusion about video games, which is not wrong. It is right, but we tend to forget that the artists involved in the gaming development are the developers. They are the artists of these games. So why not treat them as artists, right? And I feel like that's something that's missing in the gaming industry and gaming development specifically at this time, because I feel like they just, most of the time, with especially where big corporations involved, like Microsoft, Xbox, especially with there are a lot of layoffs going on right now and weird managerial decisions coming from Xbox lately, that kind of boggles my mind. It kind of makes sense that, developers should be treated as artists in terms of gaming development. If you treat them as artists, then they're going to be able to really, spread their wings in terms of creativity and actually do the things that they want. And that'll make the game be a better piece. I mean, duh. It's one of those things that you know to be true when someone says it out loud, but you don't really think about. And it's such a obvious moment. Hell yeah, of course, game developers should be treated as artists. That totally makes sense, but I just don't think it happens enough. And this is why we get really shit games. For an example, latest one that we can talk about is Mind's Eye. I think in concept was supposed to be a pretty good game, and you can tell it had its good moments as a concept. Even the story was actually not the worst I have seen. In execution, it was terrible. Terrible piece of art, if you want to call that, which just didn't turn out to be good. Why that's happening? We talked a little bit about what's going on with Mind's Eye and Leslie Benzies, the CEO of Build a Rocket Boy, who made the game, and their poor leadership issues that actually had a lot of pressure put on the game developers, which actually shows in the game itself. And that makes sense. I mean, ultimately, you take away the CEOs and the managers and whatever, the creativity comes from the developers themselves. So you need to allow them to work on their own creative ideas and actually inject those ideas into the games they're working on, instead of controlling them and micromanaging them, which is not going to help anybody. But that's what happens in most of these companies, I feel. And it's a breath of fresh air to hear that this has been the approach mostly PlayStation has taken. I mean, we don't like to talk about Concord. I don't think that this is the case across all the studios in PlayStation, under PlayStation wing. It seems like most of the good games, why they're coming out of PlayStation, and they mostly seems to be pretty solid is because they are allowed for their creative freedom. They are treated as artists, and that's what I took away from what Nate said in that little short. It makes complete sense. And you know what? Even with the creative freedom with developers, it could be a dud. It could be a mediocre game. What they end up with, that can happen. The important thing to remember is, as creative artists that are working on games, you should be allowed that freedom, and there should be guidance. Obviously there should be guidance provided by the managers and CEOs of the company. Ultimately, micromanaging is where it limits the freedom and the creativity, and then it all goes to shit. I guess even in at Sucker Punch Studios and even Naughty Dog, they probably have that level of freedom with these artists, which is why we see great games coming out of these studios. Hopefully it will remain that way so we can get more great games. Anyway, that's my take on it. Let me know what you guys think. I thought it was a very interesting take. The whole artist angle, the fact that these Sony producers and directors that are in the gaming studios have come from Sony, that worked on music. That's not something I really heard or knew before now. So I thought that was really interesting. Let me know what you guys think.